Hello and welcome to the Devy to Dynasty Film Room podcast, episode 10. I cannot believe we're already 10 episodes into this thing.
Double
And
digits.
no Matt Jackson today. It's just me and Rupert. He's at some church convention thing. Sounds super exciting. But Matthew Rupert, how was your weekend?
It was phenomenal. I got to go hiking with my boy. He'll be 5 in a month, and he summited his first mountain this weekend. So it was pretty big, proud dad moment for me.
Okay,
How about
man,
you?
that's awesome. My daughter actually just turned 5 today, so man,
Happy
life comes at
birthday.
you fast. It is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy birthday, Caroline. So we're going to get right into it, and we're going to take a little bit of a different approach this week. Normally we get through all the college stuff, and then we get into the NFL talk. This week it's going to be a little bit of back and forth. We're going to do an NFL take, and then a college take, back to an NFL take, and we'll just see how that goes. And so we'll start with you, Matt Rupert. One rookie that we've got to talk about had a monster game this week is CJ Stroud. So we're going to have a good discussion on him. He's someone that you and I both liked quite a bit. But the question now is, how high should we be ranking him? What are we trading him for? So lot to get into here with CJ Stroud. Tell me what you took away from this game this weekend.
He's exactly who we thought he was coming out, right? We were texting a couple of days ago, and it's just like, man, sometimes it kind of stinks to be right. And we were both pretty spot on. We both kind of
right
for
Panther fans.
Yes. We were Panthers fans, and we both thought that Carolina should have taken Stroud. We both like Bryce. I still really like Bryce, but there's just the kind of question mark on the durability and size outlier, which CJ didn't have. But he's exactly who we thought he was. We thought he was Joe Burrow light coming in. It looks like he's Joe Burrow. He's having a better rookie season than Joe had. He's just pinpoint accurate, and he's showing great anticipation. He's reading the defenses really quickly, making his decisions and throwing to guys before they even come out of their breaks. He's throwing to spots where he knows those guys are going to be. So he's already up there as an elite processor to me. And just, you can't place a ball any better than CJ Stroud does.
Yeah, and I think you use that word elite, and sometimes we're a little too careless throwing that word around, but I think in this case, he is absolutely deserving of the title. He puts a lot of elite traits on film, and to do what he's doing this early in his career with a supporting cast that, I mean, it's kind of a chicken or the egg kind of discussion, right? Like, is he making them look good? Or are they better than we thought they were? But regardless of what you think about it, we thought that it was a pretty terrible supporting cast coming into the year, and nobody would have expected their offense to look this good during his rookie season. And for him to have a game like he had this weekend, I mean, the biggest question I think that people had was like, what's his upside? Okay, Anthony Richardson has the Konami code, and CJ Stroud doesn't really run. So what's his fantasy upside? And when we made that Joe Burrow comp, we're like, well, Joe Burrow is pretty good upside. I mean, he's a top 4 dynasty quarterback, right? So if that's his ceiling, like, I'm cool with that. And this week, he definitely showed the upside with a really monster, like, week-winning type of fantasy performance. So the question is, like, I mean, he has to have a number of games like this one throughout a season to really be a truly elite fantasy quarterback. And I think it's fair to ask, like, how often is he going to have games like this one? The discussion came up about Bijan Robinson in our Slack chat this week. And does Bijan Robinson have more difference-making upside at his position, running back, than CJ Stroud has at his position, quarterback? Like, is CJ Stroud always going to be this low-end QB1, high-end QB2, whereas a guy like Bijan could be the RB1 overall and the value over replacement compared to the next best guy type of thing? What do you think about that? I mean, I know Bijan hasn't shown us as much as we would have liked up to this point, but do you buy that argument that Bijan has more upside at his position than Stroud does at his?
No, I don't. Like, I don't think that he needs to have rushing ability to be like a top end QB. We've seen that so much in the past. Like we see it right now with Joe Burrow, right? But Patrick Mahomes really doesn't run to affect his fantasy value. It's mostly just little scrambles. And he's QB1 in Dynasty probably. Look back just a couple years ago, Drew Brees never ran and was always throwing for 5,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. So, I don't think he needs it because he has all the other traits. So I think he can be, a difference maker at quarterback position without, having to rush for 500 yards and 8 touchdowns a year.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's hard. Hindsight's 2020, right? So am I saying that people were wrong for taking Bijan 101? Not necessarily, because he felt like a much more sure thing. Like quarterbacks are so hit or miss and so situation dependent and so coaching dependent. And obviously we're seeing Bijan's a little coaching dependent too, because Arthur Smith is holding him back here. But I don't think that'll last forever. And
No.
I do think that we've seen what happened when Gibbs got unleashed these past few weeks. He's a difference maker at the position, and Bijan is all that and more. So I really think a day will come when he's that true bell cow, and we're seeing Bijan be everything that we thought he was. He's still my Dynasty RB1. If there's any kind of dip, I'd be glad to buy it. And still, I think at this point, I would trade at least Bryce Young straight up for Bijan.
For sure.
In most situations, just because, again, he has that difference-making upside of the position that other guys don't have. So let's move on from talking rookies here for a minute. Let's get back to the college side. Alabama versus LSU was probably the primetime game this week, along with another one that we'll talk about in a minute. And one of my big takeaways from that game is Jaden Daniels. I'm really buying into him. Earlier this year, Matt Jackson, who's not on the show today, said, hey, I think Jaden Daniels is in my top 5 quarterbacks for this class. And I kind of laughed at him. And I was like, man, Jaden Daniels, he's got the rushing, but I just don't know. As a passer, he's been so rough. And up to this point in his college career, that's been true. But he has been incredible as a passer this year, just showing much more touch, much better decision-making, and he's always had a rocket arm. And the rushing, really, it's insane. I mean, this week in that game, every time they needed a big play and he was under pressure and nobody was open, it's like, man, I'm busting off a 40-yard run. He's not just getting the first down and getting out of bounds. He is breaking defenses wide open, making huge plays. And so he's a quarterback – similar to what we saw with Anthony Richardson this year, where even if he's not the best passer in the world, if he gets that draft capital and he gets that opportunity on a team, he's got everything that you want in a fantasy quarterback. And so he's someone that I'm buying in on. I think you can still get him somewhat cheap in Devy League. So I'm putting out offers in every league. I mean, there's a lot of leagues he's not even drafted. And I think there's a good chance in those leagues where the depleted draft comes around next year, he could be your 101. So it really just depends on the draft capital. And week by week, it seems like he's getting more and more likely that he actually could get day 1 draft capital. Jaden Daniels, LSU, I'm buying in. What do you think, Matt Rupert?
Yeah. Is he a sophomore or junior?
Oh, he's like a 5th-year senior or something. I mean, he's definitely okay. I don't even know. I don't think he even can stay. I think he has to come out after this year. He transferred. Okay. He was at Arizona State starting when he was like 18 years old. And so he's got if you look at his career college numbers, they're ridiculous because he's played for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been around the block a time or two.
Gotcha. So he's for sure coming out.
Yeah. And he's had time to develop. So a lot of those kind of warts that you saw early in his college career, I think he's developed and improved a lot.
Yeah. That's goes back to what we say all the time is we can't really evaluate someone's work ethic when they're coming out, and that's why it makes quarterbacks so hard to evaluate. But seeing someone that can make that big of a jump with their passing in 1 year really kind of shows you what kind of work ethic they have. So that's something that definitely intrigues me about him as a prospect.
Yeah, that definitely matters. And his wide receiver that he was throwing to in this one, Malik Neighbors, he is by far for me the wide receiver 2 in this draft class at this point. And it's a really strong draft class, but I think he's separated himself. And I would say he is an elite wide receiver prospect. I would say in most draft classes where you don't have Marvin Harrison Jr., he actually would be a pretty strong wide receiver 1 in the draft class. He's got everything that you're looking for. He's got ideal size. He's really, really shifty, very quick in and out of his breaks. He's got great top speed. He's got contested catch ability. I mean, he had one down the sidelines this week with the late hands and the body control. And it's like, I could not believe he caught it and then got his feet inbounds as well. So Malik Neighbors has elite traits all over his film. He's a great route runner. And he's someone that I think people are getting more and more on board with this. But he was very underrated coming into this year, and I'm still getting offers. Like I have him in a league, and I was sent an offer this week that I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like I don't think you're giving this man enough respect." So I won't name any names, but it was like, man, like you're talking about a guy that's going to be a top 5 draft pick in Superflex leagues. This is not like a throw-in Devy wide receiver. So Malik Neighbors is elite. You're going to learn the name. So
I haven't watched a ton of him, but I've seen a little bit. And from what I've seen, he kind of like reminds me of AJ Green, like that kind of big, tall receiver that can run really well, but is also like very good with contested catch and very like kind of graceful in his movements, like very smooth. Yeah, so I'm really interested to dig in more to his tape.
yeah, so he's not quite, what was AJ Green, like 6'4"? So Malik Neighbors is listed at 6', 200. So he's kind of more in the size profile of like a Garrett Wilson type. He's not like a huge hulking dude, and he moves like Garrett Wilson too, which you love to see that. So
Yeah.
um yeah, he's a very good player. Um so let's move back to the NFL side, Mr. Rupert. Tell me what you noticed about Will Levis, and what are we thinking about Will Levis long term?
Yeah, so we talked about an elite rookie quarterback, and we're talking about a quarterback now that just has some elite traits. But I was overall pretty impressed with what I saw in that Pittsburgh game. Nothing. He didn't throw for 4 touchdowns and no interceptions again, but he was under duress a ton that game, just constantly, and he was handling it well. Like he wasn't shriveling with the pass rush. He wasn't getting panicky. Um, what I did see was that he would like walk onto receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, quite a bit, but it's kind of hard to blame him for that. He's by far his best weapon.
Don't have a whole lot else there.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to blame him for that, but I saw some good pocket movement where he would try and avoid some guys and get the throw off anyways. There was a couple of plays where he was showing really good anticipation. They were backed up in their end zone, and he threw a dart over the middle like before the guy was even close to coming out of his break. So there was a couple of times during the game that I saw some anticipation throws, which I was not expecting to see. I really didn't see that in the first game. But I did this time. And there's one play that where he had a rusher on his right side, and he basically stepped up and threw it with basically no arm because he was about to get hit, and it was just a dart down the right sideline. And I was just like, man, like just like his ability to avoid the rush and kind of get throws off anyways was kind of Ben Roethlisberger-esque. But yeah,
Yeah, I
really
actually remember that specific play that you're talking about. I saw it too, and yeah, that's something that when I studied his college tape, he was always really panicky under pressure. And in this game, he wasn't. Like you said, he just those little side steps, micro movements, navigating the pocket where he's not like full panic, scramble, whatever. He's just those little subtle movements, still keeping his eyes downfield. So I was impressed by that. That's improvement clearly from what I saw on his college tape. And yeah, I think this is what we got to talk about with Will Levis is he is obviously going to start for the rest of this year. They announced that today. So at the very least, like for any starting quarterback in a super flex league where you know you're going to get that year of production out of them. Like that's value in and of itself. But the question is, at this point, people are he's rightly not priced as a 1-year rental, right? So what you're going to have to pay to get him, you got to ask yourself the question, do I believe in him as a long-term asset, or do I think this is a guy that's going to flame out of the league in a couple of years? What do you think, Matt Rupert? After studying 2 games, I know it's early, but are you buying in as a long-term asset with Will Levis?
I don't think he's going to flame out of the league. Like I kind of thought coming in to the season.
I didn't even think
So
he
I
could
don't think that. Do I think he's going to be elite quarterback to where like I'm going to send multiple firsts to get him in a super flex league? I'm still not there yet, and unfortunately, it's like one of those weird situations where it's going to be hard to buy him because you're not going to want to pay a ton, and then the people that have them are going to expect like 2 firsts plus.
Yeah, I think you'd have to believe in him enough to send a lot. I mean, we did see in our Slack chat, one guy said, yeah, I sent a late first for him and got it done. I don't think that's probably happening in most leagues, but even I'm at the point where I probably would take that gamble. And I was as big of a Will Levis, you can say hater, doubter, skeptic coming into this year as there was out there. And I've liked what I've seen so far. So moving on to the next big college game was Washington versus USC. So this was 2 juggernauts on the college side with lots of Devy players on both sides of the ball. And Washington came out on top, as they have done in every game this year and have arguably the best resume in college football. USC came up just short, but it was a barn burner. I mean, it was like 35-28 at halftime or something, and then ended up being 52-42. So not a lot of defense being played on either side. And even if there was, it's hard to stop either of these offenses. They're both very, very good. My big takeaway from the game, and this shouldn't be like a hot take, but from what I've been seeing on the timeline the last few weeks, people have been a little over panicked about Caleb Williams. I think like over analyzing some like interview comments and, just panicky about overall team success where they don't have a defense. And I mean, really, he's only had one bad game, even though the last couple weeks haven't been good for USC overall. Caleb Williams has been very good outside that Notre Dame game. He was excellent in this one. And I don't know, this shouldn't need to be said, but Caleb Williams is still far and away the QB1 for me. It's not close. He's still an elite quarterback prospect. I saw polls like, should Caleb Williams be the 101 or should Marvin Harrison Jr. be the 101 in super flex leagues? And it was like a 50-50 poll or something. I'm like, come on, people. Like,
that should not even be remotely close.
Yeah. So I don't know what people are thinking, but I'm just here to say, if you're listening to this show and you're not sure, Caleb Williams is QB1. He's rookie 101. Like, let's relax, everybody. He's an elite quarterback prospect. He showed me a ton in this one. In a big game, they came up short, but the defense gave up 52 points, and he put up 42. But he's got everything that you're looking for. He's got Konami code. He's got ridiculous arm talent. I mean, there's one play, it was 4th and 1, and he's like scrambling around, and he flicks this thing off platform like 40 yards downfield to the corner for a perfect back shoulder touchdown. It's like, this is ridiculous. So
he has so many of those like plays where you're just like, that shouldn't be possible. Like how?
Yeah. And on the other side, let's not disrespect Michael Penix because, they actually won the game and he's putting up an elite season. He's a strong Heisman candidate. So let's not just all talk about Caleb Williams. Let's talk about Michael Penix. He's a little bit of a tough guy to evaluate because of his age. He's an older prospect. He's been around college for a long time. And not just that, but his injury history. He's got an extensive injury history, which is part of why he's been around college for a long time. And so almost similar like Hendon Hooker last year, where you're like, okay, he's older and he's got injury concerns. And so he has a lot of traits that I really like. And on film, I feel like I see a first-round quarterback, but I wonder how the NFL is going to view this guy. Is he going to fall to day 2? Is he going to be a third-round pick like Hendon Hooker was? And that's going to make all the difference, because if he gets the draft capital, this is a guy that I feel really good about, but I just don't know how NFL teams are going to view him. And so from a Devy lens, like, to give up a bunch to go get him in a trade, and then maybe he ends up being a late day 2 pick, that's hard to really gamble on that. So, but he had one play on this one. He scrambled to the left, and that's not something he's shown a lot this year. Like, I think only 11% of his passes all season have come outside the pocket. So he's very much been a pocket passing quarterback, pushing the ball downfield, great arm talent. But he had one in this one where, he was flushed out to his left, and he's a left-handed quarterback, and he threw a dart on the run to the back corner of the end zone for a touchdown. And so that was nice to see that he can do that, but just got a big-time arm, reads the field well, and I'm just going to be really curious what the NFL thinks of him, because I'm not actively buying him in Devy leagues, but in my rankings, he's a top 5 2024 quarterback in what I think is a really good draft class. So I think he's got an outside shot at day 1 draft capital.
Yeah, I think the way with like the NFL being structured with first-round picks getting that 5th year extension, I feel like he has a really good chance to be like a back end of the first-round quarterback. The thing that really hurt Hendon Hooker was his ACL happened at the very end of the year. So,
right, you're not talking about past injury history. You're talking about present injury concerns. So that's a little bit different. So we'll see. We'll see with Michael Penix. He's certainly earned his way into the round 1 discussion. Back to the NFL side, you had an observation to make about one Michael Pittman Jr. Tell me what you got, Matthew Rupert.
Yeah, he just doesn't get enough respect. He's been a guy that's been around for a little while now, but he really seems like he's really blossomed this year. Top 11 wide receiver right now. And I think like Josh Downs is just such a perfect complement to him. I'm really excited about the Colts passing attack for the future, especially next year when Anthony Richardson gets back. Pittman just has it all. Like he's, a huge guy, 6'4", I think 225, but he can still run and, beat guys on 9 routes down the field. Being 6'4", he actually plays like he's 6'4", unlike some other guys like, Quentin Johnson.
I promise we're not going to take a shot at him on every podcast, but
right. Maybe next week we won't.
So sorry.
Yeah, so he just kind of bullies DBs, and he even has like yak ability, and he can catch slants over the middle, kind of make his living that way as well. So he can win everywhere on the field. And I traded for him in a couple of weeks this offseason where I needed some wide receiver help, and I feel like I just got to steal because people just don't value him like I feel like they should. I think he's
he was priced as a low-end wide receiver 2 in Dynasty this offseason. It was like in the wide receiver 23, 24 range. He is currently very quietly the PPR wide receiver 11 on the season.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, even with a less than ideal situation, I mean, the dude had Carson Wentz, and then he's got Matt Ryan. He had Anthony Richardson, like brand new rookie Anthony Richardson, for like 2 weeks, and now he's back with Gardner Minshew, which, no disrespect to Gardner Minshew, but we know he's not a franchise quarterback. And it's nice to see. This has been Michael Pittman's best season, and it's nice to see. We've known that the talent is there. It's nice to see him putting it together. And yeah, I'm fully with you on the Michael Pittman. I think he's probably still underrated. I think you probably still could go buy him. So put in an offer for Michael Pittman Jr.
He's still young, too. He's not old.
Yeah, he's not old at all. What is he, like 25, 26?
Yeah, 25.
So the last kind of Devy discussion we're going to have today is a little bit of a discussion on the 2024 running back class, the much maligned 2024 running back class. We know how loaded it is at wide receiver. We've talked about how deep it is at quarterback. Generational tight end prospect in Brock Bowers, maybe not quite as deep as last year's tight end class, but an elite tight end. And running backs have been a disappointment this season. We've mentioned it a number of times on this podcast. But I think it's worth discussing here because Raheem Sanders was back this week. This was the guy presumed to be the RB1 in the class coming into this year by most people. It was the consensus Devy RB1. He had over 100 yards in this one. But to me, I mean, I watched a chunk of the game, and he still doesn't look like the same guy we've seen in years past. He's put on so much weight, 240 plus. You just got to be so explosive to really carry that well. I just don't think that he's that guy. I think coming into draft season, if he even comes out at this point, because it's been a rough season, but if he comes out and he declares for the draft, we really need to see him cut weight coming into the combine because he just does not look explosive to me anymore. And I just came away concerned watching this one. Even though he put up over 100 yards, people might be like, "Oh, Raheem Sanders is back. Let's put him right back up to RB1. He was just hurt. That's all it is." But I just don't see the same guy. So that was my film observation. And along with that, I dug into the all-22 for Braylon Allen. And, this is a guy that I've been on the podcast before saying that I'm concerned about him. I think he's a plotter. He does not have good acceleration. He's not great changing directions. He's a very stiff runner, not good catching the pass. I mean, he's basically just a big tank. And I watched the all-22, and I always try to watch the film with an open mind. I'll go wherever the film leads me. I don't want to come into it with biases. I came away even more concerned than I was going in. He was terrible in pass protection, which starts to give you a little bit of an idea of why a guy like Ches Malusi, who is a total jag, was out touching him early in the year before he got hurt. I had not even noticed that concern until I dug into the all-22, and it was like, man, every time he's in pass pro, he's just getting dominated, which you wouldn't think for a 240-plus pound back that he would be getting dominated in pass pro, but it was really, really bad. There were some drops. It was like, okay, this is why he's not being used in the pass-catching department as much. And, yeah, just a lot of, he's kind of Derrick Henry-esque in that he just runs into the line of scrimmage a ton. And if the offensive line opens up a hole for him, he's gone. He's got some build-up speed, but I don't think he's got Derrick Henry kind of build-up speed. And I don't think he's got Derrick Henry's contact balance to just run through a guy and then take it to the house. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned about Braylon Allen. For a guy that's RB1 for a lot of people, I'm pretty much out on what his cost is probably going to be. So
is there a point where you would consider taking him, if he ends up falling to the second or something like that, or are you just so concerned that you're just like, I'm not going to touch him at all?
It depends on draft capital. I will say we were doing a mock draft in the Dynasty Lounge Slack chat. We were doing a mock draft, and I was on the clock at 2:03, and he had not been taken yet. And I was tempted at that point. I'm like, wow, that's value for a guy that some people think is the RB1 in the class. But I actually ended up taking Bo Nix. So I was like, all right, I think Bo Nix has a shot to be a first-round quarterback. I'll take that over a running back that I don't like. So even at 2:03, I ended up fading him. I mean, it's just a mock draft, but yeah, that's a good question. I think in most cases, I mean, we'll see combine, draft capital. There's still so much to be decided. But I think in most cases, he's probably not going to fall to 2:03. And so if I'm fading him at 2:03, it means I'm probably not getting any shares.
Yeah.
Continuing.
Who's your RB1?
Who's my RB1? TreVeyon Henderson is my RB1. Has been all along. He's been nicked up a number of times, but man, he's back. He looks as explosive as he ever has. He's a better pass catcher than any of the guys that we've talked about. He's just got more juice getting to the second level. He's more shifty. And there's just a lot that I really, really like about TreVeyon Henderson. And he's been doing it since he was a true freshman. So he's my RB1 in the class. And at this point, for me, it's a wide gap between him and the next guy. So a lot of people, it's like he's not even their RB1. For me, he's so far and away my RB1. It's not even close at this point. But I do think that I'm liking some of the under the radar guys: Blake Corum, Devin Neal, Bucky Irving, Marshawn Lloyd. A lot of these guys that don't get a lot of hype, they are putting a lot of traits on film that I really like. And so if some of those guys get day 2 draft capital, that could really kind of be the saving grace of this class, is that some of the top end big name guys maybe flame out, but some of these dark horses really emerge and make it a deeper running back class than a lot of people are thinking that it's going to be. So
pro tip, get a bunch of second and third round picks if you can. Just take a bunch of dart throws at those running backs this year.
Honestly, yeah, like, because you've also you're like 7+ deep at wide receiver in terms of guys that I'm really excited about, 5+ deep at quarterback. So yeah, the second round is going to be pretty loaded, I think, in this year's draft class. So yeah, that's a good point. Load up on those second round picks, and even some thirds could probably be pretty valuable. So we're going to wrap up here with a quick trade review. So Matt Jackson put this on the sheet for us. I don't know whose trade it is, and I don't know a lot of the context in terms of contender, rebuild, whatever. So we'll just talk in a vacuum. Drake May and a late Devy depleted second round pick, or Jahmyr Gibbs. What do you think, Matt Rupert?
I think that one all depends on what league it is. If it's super flex, I'm probably still going to hold on to Drake May, even though I don't view him anywhere near as close to Caleb Williams as a lot of people seem to think he is. I'd still lean towards the quarterback in a super flex league. But if it's a one quarterback league, like smash accept on the Gibbs side for me.
Yeah. Let's assume super flex, because otherwise I don't think this trade would even be in your inbox. And frankly, I don't know that I've ever seen a Devy league that's one quarterback. So let's assume super flex. And for me, I'm still leaning with the Gibbs side. And, you know, I don't want to develop a reputation for being a Drake May hater. Again, I actually dug into the all 22 on him this week. And I tried to go into it with an open mind. Like I want to go where the tape leads. I'm not trying to bust on my picks either, just because I have some bias, right? And in that same mock draft that we talked about at 103, I took Drake May because I felt like, as of right now, with projected top 5 draft capital and all that, like he would make sense to still be the 103 in a super flex rookie draft. But when I dug into the tape, man, again, similar to Braylon Allen, I just came away more concerned than I went in. Just very, very erratic with his accuracy, throwing balls like way over guys' heads, deep down. Like there were plays where Tez Walker got wide open deep for a touchdown, and Drake May just airmailed it by 15 yards. And just a little bit of like shoddy footwork, rushing his throws, not getting his feet set. So he did not look to me like this elite quarterback prospect when I studied the film. And you certainly saw moments where it's like, okay, this is what people are excited about, because the arm talent is very much there and he's got good mobility. It's not like Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams. Like he's not Konami code, but he's mobile enough. I'd compare him to maybe like a Trevor Lawrence in terms of his mobility. But so the traits are very much there, but I just saw a lot of like issues that really are going to need to be corrected. And I'm curious, when all is said and done, does he actually end up being that top 5 pick that everybody assumes he's going to be? And so for me, I'll take the sure thing in Gibbs. Like he's so good. We've seen it. He's locked into the top 12 draft capital. Yeah, there's a little bit of concern about what's going to happen when Montgomery comes back, but we've seen the talent. We know that like he's going to be a very good fantasy running back. So I'll just lean Gibbs here and take the risk out of the equation and not go buy a prospect that I don't believe in, even though it's a super flex league. So we'll wrap up there. And Matthew, where can they find you on Twitter?
At Matthew Rupert FF.
All right, Twitter/X. Go follow Matthew Rupert. He knows his stuff. and he's a guy you want to be following. For me, you can find me at Devy2Dynasty FR, the number 2, not TO, Devy2Dynasty FR. The FR stands for Film Room. If you're listening, this is the Devy to Dynasty Film Room podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/at Devy2DynastyFR. We will be on here every Tuesday, 7:30, and I'm really excited as we head closer and closer to rookie season. I feel like that's my bread and butter as an analyst. I know Matt Rupert loves to dive into the film. Matt Jackson does as well. So I think we're going to have some really good insights for you guys when we really get closer and closer to rookie season and we're all diving into the All-22. So you're going to want to follow along. So thanks for watching. Leave us a like, comment, sub, drop a 5-star review if you're on Apple. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.